Welcome back. I feel like we haven't recorded in forever because we kind of haven't in a couple weeks, but so many lives have been lived.
I was
Um,
about to say that. I was about to be like, well, we are different people than we were the last time we sat down for a podcast episode. So,
we've been reborn. We have a few extra scrapes and bruises and, whatnot, what have you. Um, but we're here. We're thriving. And this is the Beyond the Coach podcast. I am one of your hosts, Kelsey Nanini.
and I'm Chris Sweet.
And today we're going to chit chat about over delivering to your clients, and how over delivering to even like non paying people, like, on a freebie, and to your clients as well, is going to eventually lead to you under delivering as well. So, you want to kick us off, Chris?
Yeah, so for some background as well. So, Kelsey has done business coaching in the past. I am currently a business coach. And then obviously we mentor our coaches within our Apex Coach Accelerator program. So we get a lot of visibility over like coaches' programs and offers and what they're building out. And Kelsey, you always say, what is it like? We ran so that we walk so you could
Oh,
run
yeah.
or something. What's the term
Yeah.
you use?
We basically crawled. We slithered. We slithered so you could run. Yeah, but we've literally done all the things so that
Yeah.
you can have a clear path.
Yeah, so we really want this episode to be based around just like the topic of like one, mistakes that Kelsey and I have definitely made in our business. Like no one's perfect, but how truly like over delivering and the visibility that I have over people's businesses and that Kelsey gets to see over different offers and client delivery and fulfillment, like how that can actually start to impact the very thing that we're trying to help coaches improve, which is like their client retention and burnout and like alignment within their business. And this was something that I was like the last on my radar was like even the concept or the idea that I was over delivering because it was happening in so many different areas. It was like I would launch a challenge and I actually saw a flashback on Facebook that I shared on my story. So some of you guys may have seen it where it was like this challenge that I made in 2020 and they were getting weekly check-ins, they were getting bi-weekly calls, they were getting like a halfway point one-on-one call, they were getting custom workouts, like they were getting all the bells and whistles for a $75 challenge. Whereas I'm charging $300 plus for one-on-one coaching and pretty much delivering the same thing. And in my eyes, I was like, who's going to pay for a challenge if it doesn't have all the bells and whistles? But that's the whole point of a challenge. So it really sparked a lot of the conversation for Kelsey and I to just be like, let's talk about how over delivering is actually under delivering and like the long-term ripple effect that comes from that. Because when you are over delivering, things start to slip and slide in different areas. And that can look like in your freebie resources and the delivery of that and what you're promising to your leads from a free level. But then also, more importantly, it goes into your paying clients. And the question a lot of times is like, well, why is someone paying you this if you're doing all this over delivery elsewhere? How can you validate that? And there's definitely going to be times where your clients like will question things of like, hey, can I partake in this? Or I see you're doing this. Like, I have definitely had moments where clients have come to me and had concern of like me over delivering, but their perception is reality. So they're perceiving something that I may be marketing when in reality, it's actually different of a delivery than what they're getting as a one-on-one client. So there's a lot of clarification to be had there. But to kick off this fully and where I want to like start the topic is building your offer, because when I talk with my business clients and I'm like, hey, show me your offer, and I am presented with an offer that is like weekly 30-minute Zoom calls plus the tailored customization as far as programming, nutrition goes, all the bells and whistles, and they're like 24/7 access, but like true 24/7 access. Like they are acting like an on-call doctor when really we are personal trainers and fitness coaches. Like it's not that
Absolutely
serious at
not.
the end of the day.
Absolutely not.
So when I look at those offers, I'm like, one, if you are offering weekly calls, you should be charging $700 to $800 minimum in your program, like minimum. Now, when I say that number to a new coach, they're going to be like, yikes, imposter syndrome kicks in, all these things. They want to price this thing at $200 or less. And I shut that down real fast. And if you're not willing to charge $700, $800, which let's face it, most audiences, new audiences that are getting exposed to your business for the first time aren't going to be super receptive to buying that. it's okay to lower the value to not to over deliver, but now to actually meet in a middle tier and then be able to provide an appropriate amount of delivery. So that is what I see the most. And my biggest ick, if you will, with building an offer is when I start to see so much over delivery happening at once, but not the price rate that you should have associated with that.
Yeah, dude. Your lifetime is so much, and I think when you're first, you're an eager beaver. When you first start your program, you're like, I want to do all the things, but it's like, how, if you're only gonna deliver that to 5 to 10 clients, awesome. Your income's also not gonna be very high either. But like you said, like charge what that is. Like a lot of people want to give all the things, but I'm like, if you're actually doing a 30-minute Zoom every week, giving them a weekly check-in every week, they can message you at 24/7. That client is not taking away anything. They're not learning anything. So it's not just like your time as a coach and your capabilities and capacity, but also like what is your client actually learning if they're literally talking to you nonstop the entire week? They're not actually starting to think for themselves. And I think that's where a lot of clients will graduate from a program and then completely fail on their own because they never had to do things on their own in the program. So yeah, it's really interesting, and it's hard. Like creating your offer when you're trying to be different, you're not trying to be the same as everyone else. But I will say I saw such a substantial, because I was an over deliverer. I like was like, you need to hop on a call right now. Let's do it. Like we'll do all the things. Let's like I'm going to show up for you in every way possible. And it's like, it's great, but also like my clients weren't learning anything from that. And as soon as I set like a boundary for myself of like, I actually won't probably message you back on the weekends. Like I might on Sundays, but like when I started taking a step back and my clients were asking questions that I wasn't responding to right away, because I used to do that as well. When we moved all our communication to Everfit and not texting or WhatsApp, they actually started answering questions for themselves. And now I don't generally have clients that are, what is the word I'm trying to think of, like long-term struggling. Like they're not
Yeah.
like repeat offenders of constantly falling off the wagon and getting back on, because I have they now have to put the trust in themselves and answer the question for themselves. But now that's setting them up for way more success when they're done with the program too.
Yeah.
That was a side tangent of like delivery and like your actual client success, but yeah,
It's also like
it's
a pattern interrupt. It's like instead of hyper delivering, like, and hyper being like allowing your clients to be dependent on you, it's a pattern interrupt of them having to figure it out for themselves, also, of like
yep.
in the moment, because as the coach, like you are not the on demand or on call person for anyone. Like no one should have access to someone to that capacity other than 911. Like that should be the
Yeah.
most on demand capacity that you have from somebody, because it's literally life or death. Like your clients will be totally fine with you setting a boundary now. And like that is my biggest piece of advice for new coaches in the space is set the boundary now and do not try to over deliver out of desperation for just trying to make a sale, because you are going to do nothing for yourself in the long term and nothing for the client's success either in the long term. If that's how you're setting the tone, you're going to burn out, you're going to be exhausted. Like that's how I felt. You're going to become really resentful towards your offer and towards your clients. And that's probably my biggest regret is I wish back in 2020 someone had told me like what delivery truly looks like. And I think that's where a lot of online coaches struggle, is even when they come from the in-person, they don't know what true online delivery looks like, because there's so many more touch points you can have with someone and there's a lot more accessibility to you in comparison to online. So there's a huge growing pain that kind of happens in that. And by nature, we all just, maybe it's the people pleasers in us to some degree, or the service, like we love to provide service, where we just think over delivery is the answer. And then when this turns into then looking at how you're delivering to your online audience, it can be a lot. Like I used to have people in my DMs send me their macros, send me their workouts, ask for feedback, and I would sit down and I would dedicate time to these people. And the reality is, like, one, those people never wanted to really buy into my services, like when I over delivered, because I was giving them all the answers. I was telling them exactly what to do. Like, in what world were they going to come to me and say that they had questions or that they needed more assistance when I was literally giving it to them in the DMs? And this is where I think showing up as an authority figure online, people automatically understand that respect from you and like have respect towards you and what you're willing to deliver. And I'm not saying don't provide value, but just like don't expend yourself so far that it's like now you don't have time to do even other things in your business because you're too busy delivering to everyone else.
Yeah. One of the funniest things I always laugh about is when people are like, you have 24/7 access to me. I'm like, oh, so you're waking up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. to answer a client message? Like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
In reality, someone has like 8-5 access to me.
Hmm.
That's what you get. But yeah, like you were saying in the DMs, a lot of people, I think that we just tend to think that like fitness is black and white, and it's really not. Like I was talking about this on our school group call this morning of like there's such a, or maybe it was last night on our call, I don't know. There's such a gray area in 95% of like the answers people have to these questions. And it's funny because when I stopped answering the questions and giving people the answers, I was like, well, it depends. And in order for me to better answer that for you, I actually would need to like be in your life. I need to be in the weeds with you to better understand what that even looks like for you. And people are like, what? And I actually stopped getting answers to that, but also started getting more like inbound applications of people who were like, oh wow, like she actually knows what she's talking about. She's not willing to just give a random generalized answer. And that's where you start to like set yourself apart. But yeah, I definitely was like the chronic answer questions way back when I did the online coaching that I did before my own business for like the weekly chat or the like 8-week challenges. I would have like one of my 300 to 400 clients reach out to me in the DMs like every hour. I swear, I was answering like additional 10 to 20 questions a day in my DMs. I didn't hit my water today. What should I be doing? I didn't do this. What should I be doing? And like, I'm like, it's really, you're an adult, first of all. But like, I was so prisoned to answering those questions because I thought it was helping. In reality, that is why people like your clients are staying in the same spot because they're depending on you for the answer instead of, like you said, being the authority and setting the standard and setting the boundary that like that's not a question I'm going to answer because like I've given you the tools, but now you have to actually utilize them. And I
Yeah.
think it's all about how you start a client out too. Like you said, set it from the beginning, set the standard because as soon as you start to take away, like you over deliver in the beginning and now you're taking things away, well, now they're like, now the value has gone down of this program when in reality, as a coach, it's like, well, really, I'm actually helping you
Yep.
by taking away this value. I'm actually providing you more value, but they don't see it that way. They see it as now I'm getting less and now your program is worth less. And at the same time, you're probably taking away things and now you're increasing your price, which is the complete opposite way of how you want to do things. So you've kind of just like almost dug yourself a hole in a sense.
Yeah, and I can attest to that. Like my clients, I still have a few that have been with me since like 2020, 2021, and I have to thank them a lot because there were the program changes that I've made since 2020 to 2025. I mean, we've changed our business name twice. So like that alone has, they've had to adjust to new names. So on top of that, all the actual structural like stuff that has changed in the mix, like my clients, I value them so much because like they grew with me in that process. And I actually think my clients who have stayed with me since 2020 have actually grown more with me through that process because they got to go from a sense of me over delivering everything. But again, I was like, and I think when we think of under delivery, it's not just under delivering to other people, but also under delivering to yourself as a coach. Like you are under delivering the promises you made to yourself, the things that you need to do as a coach. You're not taking care of yourself in the same capacity as you usually do because you're too busy over delivering to everyone else that at some point you're the person who's getting the under delivery and you're the person who's getting that reflection. Or your closest friends, your family, your partners. Like there's so many things from a personal level of being an entrepreneur and a coach that gets impacted when you're focusing on over delivery. And I think my clients, though, in the mix of coming with me on that journey, have actually gotten to get more independent because they got to see how it should be. And now they're actually getting to apply the things that, like you said, it's like, okay, hey, I told you that. We've had this discussion of what to do when you have a meal out, when you have travel, when you have this. Let's have some self-startership behind it. And maybe to some point, like some people will be like, well, what's the point of hiring a coach if there's going to be a level of self-startership? There has to be. Like there has to be a level of self-startership because the whole point of being a coach is not for me to be someone's coach for the next 50 years, but for me to be a coach for a time in their life where I get to make enough of an impact that they can go on with their life and feel like they have the tools and the resources that they need. But then also, if they need more of that again, they know exactly what they're getting coming back into the program. And it's not this disappointment of someone coming back into the program being like, well, now you don't do weekly calls and you don't do this, this, and this, and you're more expensive. Respectfully, my time is valuable. And over the last 5 years, I've invested a lot of time and money into my education, into me as a coach, where like that does increase the value of my program, but you're going to get better results because of it, because I'm actually teaching things in a way more effective way than I did in 2020. So I could go like on and on and on about it, but I think the thoughts that coaches have in their head is this fear of my clients are going to leave me, my clients are going to think this, my clients are going to think that. Instead of, and we talk about this a lot with our cohort group, it's like instead of like the what if of the negative, like think of the what if of the positive. Like, what if I go from weekly calls with my clients to monthly calls, and now those calls are actually get to be more impactful because we have more to talk about because they've been able to apply a lot more in a month span, that I can give them way better feedback and we can have way more intentional with time. Because I guarantee if you were doing weekly 30-minute calls with your clients, at least 10 of those minutes are you effing around. Like you are not doing anything impactful with your time. Your calls could probably be 10 to 15-minute weekly touch points if you were doing weekly calls with someone, as opposed to 30 minutes, because it's just unnecessary time. And the thing I wanted to break down actually was like for the people who are offering these programs that are like $200, $300 and are weekly 30-minute calls. If you are working with, let's say, 20 individuals and you're doing weekly 30-minute calls, one, it's a literal dumpster fire of a scheduling nightmare because you are probably dealing with people who work a 9 to 5. So guess what? Now your evenings or your mornings are going to be bogged down with calls.
10 hours.
Then comes 10 hours. And then everything else that comes with that is you still have to program for them. You still have to go in and do whatever progression work you need to do for them, form checks you need to do for them, future pacing planning. Maybe there's something coming up that you're working on a project. You still have so much. And then no one talks about the energetic time that comes from taking calls. 10 hours of calls a week is a lot. Energetically for me, if I am getting on a lot of calls, I can't do anything else in my day. Like I am completely spent. And you need to understand the energetic side of doing that volume of calls as well, where you likely need some time to reset. And I don't think coaches see that enough. And then when you look at, okay, working with like 20 people for what, $200 $200 an hour. I mean, heck, if you can be charging $200 an hour,
I'll get
$200
after
a
me
month.
for that.
You're only making $4,000, and that's like not enough sometimes. Like that, it after taxes, certainly not enough. Like
And all your
you,
like systems too.
all your systems, if you want to scale, it's just not a very easy like framework to scale with. So I can't get it across enough that like your time is so worth it. And unfortunately, there are going to be people who can't afford your services. And I know so badly, like we were having this conversation this morning on our school group, about one of the coaches who attended just basically saying like, but I just want to be able to like let moms afford this and let people afford this. I get it, but match the offer to the price at that point so that there is a barrier of entry for those people you want to serve. But unfortunately, the weekly check-ins, the progressions, the individualization, it takes time, and you need to price your stuff at a rate that is showing the value and is also respecting the amount of time it's taking. Otherwise, you're going to need to work with hundreds of clients to just make a livable wage at that point.
Yeah, and I also think too, if you're undercharging, just specifically in terms of, pricing, I saw this firsthand when I first started. And given you do need to have a like somewhat of a lower ticket, right? Like I'm not going to come in taking my first client at $800 a month. Like, frankly, probably not worth that at that point. But like once you've coached enough people, like sure. But if you're only charging $150 a month, even $200, $250 a month, like for full coaching, you are not going to get people that are bought in. That's why you're getting people that are ghosting because frankly, like so little. And yes, like online, I think a lot of people, there's a misconception, like people are like, oh my gosh, coaching is so expensive. Like, I just want an in-person. I'm like, your in-person trainer is minimum $50 an
More
hour.
expensive.
It's $150 a week, at least if you're doing 3 sessions, truthfully. Um, I mean, I used to do it in my garage and I charged 45 an hour, but that was because I had no overhead costs. Um, but yeah, it's just like, it's, you can't charge out of fear of what other people can afford. That's not your problem, because there are people out there that will afford your program and will be bought in. I think that you like have to look at it at a point of what all you're offering. And yeah, if you are offering, let's say you're offering $200 a month and you're doing a weekly 30-minute call. Weekly, that person is paying $50 a week. So now you're saying that on the programming, the Zoom call, the additional messages they're sending, you're worth $50 a week, which means that call that you have with them is minimum wage or less. Like that call you have with them, if you're charging $20 for the hour, then you're saying all your other services are like $30 in total. Like, you're not charging your worth. Like, for someone to have a live call with me, it's minimum $100 for the hour. Like,
Mm-hmm.
minimum. Because my time is valuable. And you have to start thinking of yourself as a professional in that, in the space. Like, you're giving value to someone. But yeah, in the terms of like also over delivering and your client not being able to learn, like the best thing that you can do for a client, even if they are paying for you as a coach, like I think it's very, like you were saying with like people coming in, like, well, I don't want people to think of like, what's the point of coaching if I'm not actually doing the coaching. Coaching is different from teaching. Coaching is also partially allowing people to come to the conclusion themselves, which is why we talk about a lot in our cohort and a lot in our school group is like, you have to get really good at asking the right questions instead of telling. And I was a chronic teller. And I think that's what also led to my burnout, because when you tell somebody something, they're not actually absorbing the information and learning it themselves. They're just like, and not, let's actually, let me rephrase that. They're not understanding how to do it. They're just learning the information. That doesn't mean they're actually understanding how to apply the information. Whereas if you ask the question and you're like, well, you tell me, like, what would you do? What would you tell yourself in this situation? And like more guiding them to the answer, that's coaching, because now they're learning it on their own. Like, it's not reasonable to think, like you said, to coach people for 50 years. Now, I have clients who stay with me simply because they just like the accountability and they stay on top of their shit. They just want someone to like create the plan for them, and that way they don't have to worry about it themselves. That's a whole different story from someone who's depending on you for every single answer. And over delivering is just getting your clients stuck. That's why you have non-adherent clients, because you're trying to do too much and then they're overwhelmed and then their system is malfunctioning because they're like, I don't even know what's going on anymore. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, because you've given them like 13 tasks to do and you can't focus on that all at once.
Yep. Yep. Another area too of over delivery is the check in itself. So it's like when you're doing check ins, I polled people on my page yesterday just to kind of get a gauge of like, how long do your check ins take and how do you feel towards check ins? And it's funny because the people who said that their check ins take them like 20 plus minutes per check in were the people who were like, I feel drained and I feel not great at the end of my check in day. And Kelsey, I know you like love check in days. You're like, it is my favorite day of the week. I get to serve my clients. I feel so similarly on that, where it's like, and I think it comes with also having a really good system that energetically feels good towards check-ins. Because don't get me wrong, I've definitely had times in my business where like I resented check-ins. It came from lack of organization and it came from over delivering way too much on every single check-in. For anyone who isn't watching, balloons just popped up on my screen and that threw me off.
Just
I need to
warning you
figure out
that
how to
the
turn off
check-ins.
these camera settings. Um, but with that, it's like, in I guess I'll kind of ask you, Kelsey, like in your eyes, what is a well delivered like check-in? Like when a coach is like not over delivering, not under delivering, like in an ideal world, what do you feel like that looks like?
Yeah. Uh, it depends. Like my my favorite phrase, it depends. My coaches, like the check-ins I give to my coaches tend to be a little bit longer. Like they do tend to be in that 15 to 20-minute range, only because I'm also helping them with client cases and client questions. Their portion of the check-in is probably closer to like 7 to 8 minutes. And it ultimately also depends on the week too. But a client check-in, so we have to think about it this way. Your job is check-ins and providing value to your clients, nutrition, fitness, all the things, right? Their job is not that. Like a client does not want to sit and listen to you yap for 20 minutes, most likely, because at some point we're going to tune out. Like we live in a society where we need things now. Like you have to think, even like long form content. I know people will listen to like podcasts and stuff, but like for the most part, someone's going on Instagram and just scrolling and they just want that immediate like effect, right? Like people don't want to listen to a check-in forever, which is why I love Loom, because it requires people to watch the video and also listen at the same time and absorb it that way versus like a voice memo. I would so easily check out and be like, meh, I don't really need to listen anymore. But at least with Loom, you're watching and listening at the same time where you can be more engaged. So good check-in. First off, don't read off the check-in. Oh my gosh. I know you just posted about this yesterday. It's literally my biggest pet peeve. Your client knows what they fucking wrote. They wrote it. They know what they're struggling
Yes.
with. You don't have to be like, oh, so it looks like you drank 80 ounces of water this week and it sounds like you weren't super thirsty. And you're like reading, like, they don't fucking care.
Or like when you go like question by question by question by like if your check-in is 20 questions and you are reading verbatim and then giving feedback after reading verbatim. I know I asked you the question, but I just had to tap it because I also get very
Yeah. Dude, that's no, it's fine. Talk about the theme. When you're reading off a check-in, it tells me that you didn't read the check-in or even prepare for the check-in prior to pressing record. So, a good check-in, like what I would do, I have two screens. So, what I typically would do is, or what I recommend, I don't do it anymore because I've pretty much just gotten really good at just like understanding the check-in and going for it. If you don't feel confident in your check-ins and don't feel like you can keep it short and concise, or not, I should say short, but concise and productive, pull up a Google Doc and write like bullet points of the check-in and what you want to cover so that you're not going through everything. Like if someone didn't have their menstrual cycle this week and that's a question on your form and they're like in their follicular phase and it doesn't, there's nothing to note, or they're in their early luteal phase where nothing's happening. They're just chilling. Like there's no feedback you need to give on their period if there's nothing happening. Like don't even talk about it. It doesn't need to be talked about. So like that's kind of on the check-in. If there's things that just aren't important for that week, it's okay to not talk about them. Just talk about the main points. And that's why I encourage people to pull up a Google Doc, and whether that be a Google Doc like on part of your screen if you don't have dual screens, whatever that looks like. Maybe you're taking notes next to you on a pen and paper, and that's okay if you're like, let your clients know, like, hey, I took notes on this so I can make this super clear and concise. If I'm looking over to the side, it's because I want to make sure I'm covering everything I took notes on. So the way I like to structure client check-ins is like, one, start with something positive. Start
Can
with
you
their
hear
win for the
Bo's?
week. Yes,
Sorry, can you hear Bo snoring?
Bo is in a deep sleep. He's having a really good dream.
He's having such a good dream. It's hysterical. Like we're not trimming this. I think everyone just needs to hear Bo's
Oh no, I
snores.
think it's perfect. Yeah, I was actually just like continue. He's
No,
a sleepy
I'm glad
boy.
you were continuing. I'm gonna take a picture so that the world can see what I'm dealing with here. He's snug,
Bo's
like he's honestly living the dream life that I hope everyone's clients can be as relaxed
he
coming out of
needs
your
it.
program as
Yeah.
Bo is relaxed right now.
Bo
So
deserves a
funny.
good slumber. So
Sorry.
cute.
I just heard it. I was
Like, I'm just gonna keep going.
it just kept getting louder and louder and louder, and I was like, I have to say something.
The microphone is doing its job for sure. Picking up
It
everything.
really is. The blue Yeti mic, great quality.
10 out of 10 I recommend, honestly. Um so with your client check-ins, I think it's very easy if a client's really struggling for the week. It's really easy to immediately point that out and be like, okay, well, it sounds like you just did awful this week. Please don't say that. But it sounds like you're really struggling this week. Like, I don't even start the check-in off with that. I would be like, hey, first off, they're probably beating themselves up because they really struggled for that week. So I'm like pointing something positive out. Always start the check-in with something positive on a good note. Then you're like, that happened, but it also sounds like you really struggled this week. Here's X, Y, and Z of what things struggled with. Here's how we're going to prioritize those things this week. And so giving feedback on it. If they struggle with nutrition, pull up their MyFitnessPal and give some suggestions of how they can build more balanced meals. If they struggled with their training and they're experiencing pain, hopefully you got form videos and can go through that. But it's actually giving specific data. Like, don't just stay on their check-in form. Give them actual things to focus on. Give them the visuals. Like, if you have EverFit and they use MyFitnessPal, you have access to their MyFitnessPal. Same thing with Trainer Eyes. Pull it up. Don't make it super boring to where you're just reading off a check-in form. Like, pull up their form videos, cover those in real time. So I think it's just like more so start with the positive, give feedback on specific things to improve on. If a client has a ton of check-in videos, I actually sometimes will start the check-in off with that just to get it out of the way, and then I'll get into their check-in. It kind of just depends on like the flow of what they need for that week. Like a lot of clients that send a lot of check-in forms videos, they usually don't even really need, like some weeks they don't really need a lot of feedback otherwise. But yeah, that's how I like to do it. Start with a positive, give feedback, end with a positive. It's like the sandwich method. End with some encouragement that they may need for the week. If they're a repeat offender and they're constantly struggling, then yeah, you may need to give them a little tough love. We kind of talked about that on our call. I think it was on Monday, of like sometimes we're too understanding. So in the check-in, sometimes you just need to lay it down the law. I think there's a good balance of like gentle coaching, but also like they hired you for a reason. They don't need to just be told like, it's okay, you'll get it next week. Like sometimes people literally just need you to be like, what the fuck? Like you're not doing anything and you're expecting this result. So I think finding a good balance, maybe don't say what the fuck. I probably would. Maybe I wouldn't. I wouldn't say it. But it's like really sometimes people don't just need you to be like, it's okay, honey. You can get it next time. Like sometimes in a check-in, you literally need to actually be like the constructive, like, hey, we need to get your shit together, coach. Yeah, that's what I would say is a productive check-in. It's not like all the foo-foo stuff of going through every question. Like if the question is not important, and this is why it's so important to read the check-in first. Read through the check-in first, take notes if you need to, understand what you're saying going into the check-in, because otherwise you're going to try to end the check-in. And I've totally been caught doing this some weeks where I'm like, maybe I have a compressed day and I'm like, really need to grind through check-ins. And then I don't really read them first. I'm like, let's just go into it. Then I realize at the end, I'm like, okay, well, that's all I have for you. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I missed this question. I'm so sorry. Like, that looks bad. And then your check-in takes longer anyway. So go in with a plan. And that's a constructive check-in where your client is not going to just be like, is she ever going to shut up? It's like, here's the things, here's what's happening. Like, that's what a check-in is for. And that's not over delivering. It's delivering the perfect amount to where your client can take it and apply it too.
Yeah, I think another piece of that too is like keep in mind there's messenger access for a reason too. So if there's things that you need to elaborate more on or like need to ask questions to be able, like don't just try to deliver an answer to just deliver an answer. Like if a client like asks a question or there's something that's like marked on their check-in, under delivering is you trying to answer it without enough information, like without enough information to actually answer the question. So it's also okay for you to ask questions and to carry things over to like the messenger side of things, as opposed to just trying to like answer everything for your client as if you know the answers. Like I wish more than anything, if there's like one thing I wish that we could be as coaches, it's mind readers. Like I wish we could read some minds, because our jobs would be so much easier. But like it's okay if the check-in has to like extend past just the check-in response. Like it's gonna probably be a little bit of back and forth. I actually had that a lot this week because I am taking over Coach Megan's clients while she's on maternity leave right now. And so a lot of my check-ins this week with them was actually me like asking them questions versus me giving like direct feedback or coaching them through something, because I want to have a deeper understanding of what's going on before I'm just suddenly throwing things in. So, and that's not you being a bad coach if you have to ask more questions. Like that's you actually being a really good coach and not just making assumptions, because what's the term? Like assumptions make fools of us all. Like that totally applies in the coaching realm as well, and can go into the over delivery, under delivery like topic. It all just kind of encompasses together. And then to just go back to the offer thing here for a second, like it's okay to have a dream offer where you do over deliver the hell out of your, like for your clients. Like it's okay to have that, but have it appropriately priced, have it appropriately like energetically aligned. And you're probably going to have a max roster. Like Kelsey and I do not work with 30 coaches per each of our rosters, because our coaching offer is our high level offer. We can't work with 30 coaches each under that offer. And we know that. And that would be us over delivering just to then under deliver to coaches if we racked up our roster. So be realistic with like what you're delivering, what your capacity is, price it appropriately so that you obviously can respect your time and the energy you're giving to your clients. I think that all just goes like a really long way.
Yeah, at the end of the day, your clients come first. So here's the thing is like, if you find that you're like, well, I don't have the time, but I need more clients because I need more money. Well, it's like, let's restructure your offer then to provide more value, be a super high value coach so that you can charge more and deliver your clients more. Like, I'm not just charging what we're charging. Like, we don't just charge what we charge because we can. It's like, we're literally charging that because that's what we offer, but we're also delivering what that is worth. And I think that's so important. So if you're finding that you're having like that, what is the word, that mindset? Not minimalist. I always forget what it is. It's like, anyways, you're finding that you're just having that like scarcity. You're having that
I was like trying to think of a word.
minimalist
I'm like, what's the
scarcity.
opposite?
You're having like that scarcity mindset of like, well, I need, 30, 40 clients to build, make the amount of money that I need. It's like, okay, well, maybe, hear me out, you just provide higher value as a coach. And that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean providing more always. But like I said, with my coaching clients, a lot of their check-ins are much, much longer. But that's because they're also paying me a lot more than other clients, but they also have a lot more that we have to go through in the check-in. So
Yeah.
I think it's just important going back to charging your worth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I also, unless you have something else to add, I wanted to switch gears to like freebie and like challenge delivery as well and kind of go through that. Um,
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to the offer
yeah.
side of things and like more that side of like sales, business, like client delivery is also don't try to over deliver on a sales call. Like don't try to be the promise
Mhm.
keeper to this person on a sales call just to close a deal. Like don't just be like, if they're like, oh, well, I need a meal plan and I need this and I need this, I need this. Don't just like bow down to them and say, yeah, I can give you a meal plan. No, you cannot. Like you legally cannot give them a meal plan as a personal trainer. You do not have the jurisdiction to do that. You're
You
already outside of
shouldn't.
your scope. You should not be doing
You
that.
don't need it.
Exactly. And keep in mind, like, they're coming to you because what they think they need hasn't been working for them for a prolonged period of time. So they're not just being like, yeah, I need a meal plan. You can't validate that. You need to be like, actually, respectfully, I think you need something different. And here's exactly what that is going to be in my program and how it's going to help bridge that gap for you. And you have to be so freaking direct in that because I have been there where I have overpromised on sales calls. And guess what? It ends up in sticky situations, client cancellations. You're burnt out. You bring clients into your program that are not at all aligned for you energetically, and they expect the everything, the moon, the sun, everything, they expect it from you. So that is the
Yeah.
last point I want to make on over delivering on like that side, and
Uh,
now we can transition into more like the free and community based stuff.
yeah. I think the best thing you could say on a sales call is it depends. Like, it depends. I won't actually know until I get into your account, until I get into your life and understand better of what is going on. It's going to depend. But like, I like to give a timeline versus exactly what we're going to do. I'm like, hey, yeah. Anyways, um, freebies, challenges. I think a lot of coaches in programs, they immediately are like, I want to do a challenge. I want to give them, like you were saying, I want to give them weekly check-ins. I want to give them bi-weekly Zooms. Let me just be clear. I don't believe a challenge should include a check-in. That is what your one-on-one check-ins are for. A challenge or a freebie, we so many people are over delivering. One of my clients actually struggled with this a lot. She's like, I want to give them so much value that they want to sign on. And I'm like, no, 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 no. The point of a freebie, the point of a challenge, the point of those things is to lead them to realize the problem they have. Realizing, like, oh my gosh, I actually do need them because I can't do this on my own. So, like, anything that you do in a challenge, if it's set up right, is going to lead them to believe that, oh, wow, actually having the accountability of a coach is so helpful. If a person's only paying you $75 for a 4-week challenge, please do not just message them back at every beck and call. I actually don't even believe you should get one-on-one messaging access. It should be all in a group setting. And if they ask you something one-on-one, say, hey, like, this is something I actually deliver to my one-on-one clients. And that is the perk of one-on-one coaching. Those boundaries, it's not you coming off as a jerk. It's like those boundaries are actually what leads to you being respected more. So they're like, oh, wow, like, their time is worth something. But when you let clients walk all over you, that's when they're just going to continue to do so because you've allowed for it to happen in the past.
It's also almost like if someone came to you for your job, right? Like, let's say, like, anybody came to you for their job. Let's say you're a nurse, right? And someone comes in and they're asking a question that's actually for like HR, right? And it's like, actually, that's like an HR question, or that's a this question. I think it's just like, okay to be like, this is my lane. This is what I do. This is what you're getting through my offer, through like my delivery. That might not be the best comparison, but it is like if someone came to you and asked for something where you're like, that actually isn't what I do. Like, somebody else does that. So let me like redirect you to the right place to actually get you the answer. So someone in a challenge who's coming to you and being like one-on-one sending you a message, it's like, hey, this is the best place actually to get this answer is here, because that's where we deliver it. That's where that could be, focused on as far as things go there.
Yeah. And I think the biggest like takeaway of just this whole thing that I just kind of thought about, because I feel like that's kind of like the main points of like freebie, and like it's a very short conversation. It's like, don't over deliver. They don't need all the bells and whistles. They need to just realize, they need to be led to realize that there is an issue, and your program is what is best fit to do it. So like throughout the program, you can sprinkle in things of like, this is what I do with my one-on-one clients that works really, really well. If you are going to do bi-weekly calls, which I've had that where we like focus on different habits. I did it a long time ago. Honestly, I've hated challenges. They work really well for some people. I've hated running them. I just never have really enjoyed them that much. It's a lot of effort, and that's the other thing. It is a lot of effort, but I think it's been a lot of effort for me in the past because I've tried to over deliver. But I think just one common theme, whether it be through your one-on-one client delivery, your challenge delivery, sales call delivery, like DM delivery, whatever it may be, is like, I don't want it to come off as we're just doing the bare minimum. In fact, it's quite the opposite. In my time coaching, always, like throughout the entire process, I've always put clients first. Like, I love my job. I didn't get into it for the money. Obviously, it's awesome to be able to build your own business and be able to scale, and everybody wants money. Like, but my career path I didn't start off as an online personal trainer in 24-hour fitness making $18 a session because it was for the money. But it's always been client first. And so when you're thinking about over delivering, you aren't putting the client first. It maybe feels like that because you're like, well, I want to give them everything. I want to help them. That's not helping them. And what we've learned, what Chris and I've just talked about a lot, is like, when you're putting the client first and when you're actually teaching the client how to do the thing and how to have long-term success, it's also allowing the client to at some point be in the driver's seat. Now, you're not always going to be passenger princess to them. You are still the authority, but your client needs to learn to drive their own car. Like, they can't just be in the backseat of an Uber the whole time in their journey, just hoping that you guide them to the right place. Like, they have to be maybe backseat driving a little bit. Not backseat driving. They have to be driving. You have to let them learn. Give them their learner's permit so they can go off and drive on their own eventually. And that's putting the client first, because now you're not a band-aid to their solution. You are the solution. Like, you are helping them long term. And I think if it's just one thing I could have like coaches take away, no matter where you're at in your journey, whether you're new to coaching or whether you're in a coaching position right now and feel like it's going nowhere and you're not having success in it, it's like, clients come first, but that doesn't mean that you're giving them every piece of information that you've ever learned in your entire life. It means that you're helping guide them to the answer so they can do the thing. And that is putting the client first.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's just all in the fact that like over delivery, under delivery, there's two spectrums of it. Like, you can be over delivering, you can be under delivering. And I don't think you really get to learn what the true like level of delivery is until you've done one or the other. Like, we're not
Yep.
going to be able to sit here on this podcast and say, here's how to never over deliver, never under deliver. We're here to tell you our mistakes and definitely tell you our opinions on things of like what is what, to hopefully give some sort of preventative action on that. But I also think there's a level of reactivity that has to happen once you've over delivered or under delivered to your audience, your clients, whoever. And another thing too is like, when you're doing things like challenges and maybe you offer like nutrition assessments, like all the nutrition assessments that clients like that you'll deliver to clients, it's not to give them the next year of answers. It's to address what is happening now, give them visibility. And like Kelsey said, the little breadcrumbs, as I call it, of like my program, my clients, my this, my that, like having that verbiage when you are talking to someone. It's sales psychology as well, where like people need to hear these things so many times for them to finally be like, okay, maybe I want to be a part of this program. Like maybe Kelsey does have all the answers for me. Like maybe she actually can guide me to success, because every time I ask for just like short-term knowledge, I'm not getting there long-term, because it's just not going to happen. And I would, as coaches, like make content around that and just like really center in the time, the effort, the things that it takes. And your like specialty as a coach, I think it's less of, you brought this up earlier, and I know I'm bringing it back to offer, but it's like everyone wants to be special. Everyone wants to be like, I have this like signature program and no one does it. I'm going to break some hearts here and tell you that you're not the only one who has a program like that. Like your program, unfortunately, will never be this like one all be all program that you only have and you only know the secret sauce. Any coach can deliver a success to a client. Like any coach can do that. Where the uniqueness comes in is you as a coach, like how you deliver and how you coach and the feedback you give to your audience, to your clients, to whoever, in your freebies, in your email list, in your content. That is what gets people to buy into your program, and that is the uniqueness of your program. I could search personal trainer on my Instagram and go to the first page that pops up and technically apply for that person, but I don't know anything about them because there's no brand that's been bought into it. So I think as you get to show your uniqueness as a coach, that sells, and you can over deliver yourself in that way of showing who you are as a person, showing who you are as a coach, like giving insights to client check-ins and the type of like delivery that you give, because the coach client relationship, that match is so important. It starts from what your audience starts to see, and then they get bought into that type of coaching.
Yeah. Going back to the client coach relationship too, I think it's so important to recognize you're not going to help everyone. You're not going to be able to help every single person. You aren't the right fit for every single person. And I think
What just happened?
Autzen just tried to eat Yogi. So we're just having a lot of pet things. You need to leave. You need to go out of my room. Autzen.
Between Bo snoring and you.
That was wild.
Also, he's like literally like,
oh my gosh.
Just look at Bo.
Oh, he's zonked.
He is zoinked.
Well, okay.
You were saying on the topic of coach-client relationship.
Coach-client relationship, you are not right for everyone. And I think this is something I had to learn a long while ago. When I first started coaching, when you're in person, you don't get to choose your clients necessarily. I did once I had my own like garage gym, but like at 24 Hour Fitness, I was at the mercy of anyone that was in Auburn, Washington, that was a member of 24 Hour Fitness. And like most of them were not ideal. It was fun to learn though. Like I definitely think having that experience helped me be such a better coach. But online you do get the choice, and that's the beauty of online. That's why I love online coaching so much, is that I'm not just tied to a geographical location. I can help anyone anywhere. Like you can coach someone in Australia, you could coach someone in Italy, you can coach someone everywhere. And that means that now you like, it's not always going to be a good fit. And so if you have someone who's constantly you wanting to push your boundaries or constantly wanting more delivery and it's out of your integrity, like you reserve the right to not coach them if it's not a good fit. And I think we often, again, scarcity mindset. It's like, well, if I let this client go, but it's like, if you let that client go, it's going to be better for the both of you, because you're not going to be fully giving your capacity to that person if they're if they're needing more than what you can give, and vice versa. They're going to learn from someone so much better that can give that to them. So I think it's really important to just have that boundary as well, and know that too. Like you're not broken, they're not broken. It's just that it was not a good fit, and like that fit is so important. And you may not even realize that until after the sales call when you've signed them on, and then you recognize it's not a good fit. It's happened to actually one of my coaches recently that's an assistant coach, and we had to have that conversation of how she could go about it with her boss and kind of like talk through like, how do I let this client go? Like it's just not a good fit and I'm not going to be a good coach to them. And that takes a lot of guts to like admit that too, but it's for the betterment of both of you. So I think that's just an important thing to remember too.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you there. Um, I feel like I could just ramble on and on about it, where I'm like, just don't
Yeah.
learn from our mistakes. Don't feel temptation of the emotions. Like we always say, be proactive, not reactive. And it literally applies in anything that you have a question mark in your business. And it comes also from the sense of like over delivery, under delivery. Like don't be reactive all because you had a bad client experience, or like you're on the brink of maybe needing to fire a client or let go of a client. Like there's so much power that you get to have as a coach that I don't think we give ourselves enough credit for, because like we don't have to do something we don't want to do. Like we don't have to serve someone we don't want to serve. I think at the same time there's like levels of things the client needs to work on, but the things the coach needs to work on. And that's like the whole point of
Yeah.
the conversation is like there's things that you need to work on from a delivery standpoint that will put you in a better position. And there's always going to be things for clients to work on, but it is in how you present yourself. And it took me 5-6 years to feel like I'm very confident in my delivery, maybe a few years, but like the first 2-3 years I had to make a lot of mistakes. Like I had to
Yeah.
do the challenges that drained me and these like $75 offers. And then I wondered why no one wanted to come work with me one-on-one, because I was delivering this in such a low cost space. And it's funny because then people also think you're going to run it again. And they're like, oh, I'll just wait for the next challenge. It's like, there is no guarantee. Like, there is no guarantee of what I'm going to run next or what I'm going to do next. What I will say on the topic of challenges is if you guys find something that works, don't continue to try to like rework the wheel and make a whole new offer every time. Once you dial into a challenge framework, or once you dial into a freebie framework or a check-in framework or some sort of framework, literally keep that framework until you feel like there is something of value that needs to be added to it for some reason or another, or a change or a switch or a theme that you want to create within it too. That's when you should change it. Don't feel like, I think as coaches, we get so hung up in always needing to change something. Nothing needs to change. Like genuinely consistency, the same way clients like need consistency to lose weight, to gain muscle, to build strength, to do whatever. You as a coach need consistency in your brand, in your messaging, in your content, in your offer, in your check-in process across the board. Otherwise, yeah, you're going to feel like a revolving door constantly. Stay true to who you are. Like when my business clients come in, they're like, I don't know what to post this week. I'm going to be like, look at your content 3 weeks ago and let's like rework that content, because it's not a matter of making something new every time, because you're not reworking the wheel. You're not recreating this whole beautiful thing. Like content's content. Like, and the ideas you have, someone else has posted that too, but you haven't posted that, or you haven't posted it enough to like fully get that across. Focus on that, like perfect the craft more than thinking of picking up a new hobby every time. Like that's the biggest thing that I can get across.
For sure. That's so good. So good.
Mic drop.
So yeah, hopefully you guys took away a little nugget. I think that it's like everyone's delivery is going to look different depending on who your client is too. So it may take a little bit of trial and error on your part, but hopefully this helps take away some of that trial and error.
One thing I want to add too is if you have other friends in the industry who are delivering a different style, don't make that suddenly make you feel like you need to deliver. Like even Kelsey and I together, like we both literally work under the same business. We both offer the same stuff. Like coaches can work with me, coaches can work with Kelsey, but it's going to be a different delivery. Like it's going to be a different style to how we do things or say things. And I think that's the beauty of coaching, is that you truly get like a good personality fit for what you need and for how you like to be educated or talked to, or, supported, or how you want programming written out. Like everything is so different. We learned that last night on our like cohort call that we hosted. It was just that like everyone's gonna have a different answer and everyone's gonna do something. Regardless, you're gonna get someone results. Like you will. There's no perfect like right or wrong way to doing it. But all because someone else is doing something different doesn't mean different is bad, right? Like you do not need to suddenly be like, oh, my stuff's so different, I need to go do it how they're doing it. Maybe your clients aren't as receptive to that. Maybe your ideal client actually prefers how you do things this way. And all because you hear someone else deliver a check-in a certain way doesn't mean you now need to go change up how you're delivering check-ins entirely. So I know it's a lot being said when you've just listened to a whole 50-minute podcast when you're like, okay, well, I was just being given all this advice. What do I change?
Yeah.
Don't go stir crazy in the change. Like you can listen to all the self-help, leadership, coaching, podcast, books, textbooks, everything. But at the end of the day, like make small breadcrumb effects and like changes that over time build up to something that feels really aligned, and not doing 180 changes every time you get an opinion or hear more noise from like a podcast or a coach, a mentor, a friend, anybody, or even feedback from clients. Don't feel like you suddenly need to burn it all down to make it better, because it could be really good right now. Add a few
Yeah.
breadcrumbs in and then change it. Like that is the biggest thing that I can say for anybody listening to this podcast. And just kind of a big takeaway for you guys is take all the nuggets of information, figure out where that fits best for you. If you have questions on that, like let Kelsey and I know, because we are here to deliver to you guys to a degree and to give you some guidance and to show you the value that we can help you with, whether you are an audience member or whether you're thinking of wanting to work with us one-on-one or join our school group or whatever. Like we are here to kind of help direct you on that, because we've just been in your shoes so much more than I think that we can even speak on in a single podcast episode, let alone I feel like ever I'll be able to tell all the things that we've been through, but we've been there probably for what you're dealing with.
Yeah. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if you're questioning things, obviously our school group is free. There's a link to join in the show notes. But also, if you want more like one-on-one attention, you want more eyes on like your delivery, your clients, all the things, we do offer one-on-one coaching as well, which there's a link in the bio to inquire, and we'll schedule out a call and chit chat a little bit more about what you may need. So yeah,
And
that is all in there.
And then lastly, too, is we have a new freebie coming out for you guys as well. So we do have a check-in bundle freebie. It will be out by the time of this podcast. So go ahead, link in bio will be here for you to claim that freebie. It's super in-depth, super detailed. Like we're giving you pretty much the framework for how to deliver client check-ins, best practices for client check-ins. We even have one of our modules from our Beyond the Cert course in there for you guys as well, just to get a taste of what that looks like from a module standpoint, and how to deliver that too. So take a peek at that.
Sweet. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the podcast, and we'll connect with you soon.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.